My name is Margaret Sullivan, and I never thought I'd be sharing something like this. I'm just an ordinary grandmother of 4, a retired school teacher who spent 30 years teaching 3rd grade in a small town in Minnesota. I've always believed in God, attended church most Sundays, and tried to live a good life, but what happened to me on that cold February morning in 2023 completely transformed my understanding of everything. Before I share what I witnessed during my time on the other side, I want you to know that I've always been skeptical of these kinds of stories. When I'd hear about near-death experiences or visions of heaven, I'd usually change the channel or scroll past them. That's just not my kind of thing, I'd tell my daughter Sarah whenever she'd share such testimonies with me. I was comfortable with my quiet, steady faith, saying grace before meals, reading my devotional most mornings, and volunteering at the church food pantry twice a month. But God had other plans. Looking back now, I can see how He had been preparing me, though I didn't recognize it at the time. In the weeks leading up to that February morning, I'd been having unusual dreams of trumpets in the distance, of gathering storms, and of lights spreading across dark skies. I'd wake up with a sense of anticipation I couldn't explain, but I'd brush it off and go about my day, making breakfast for my husband Tom and working in my garden when weather permitted. The morning it happened started like any other. I was in my kitchen, preparing a casserole for the church potluck that evening. The local Christian radio station was playing softly in the background, and I remember feeling particularly peaceful. Tom had left early for his men's Bible study group, and I was enjoying the quiet morning alone. The clock on my microwave read 9:17 a.m. when I reached for the bag of frozen peas in my freezer. That's when everything changed. The pain hit me like nothing I'd ever experienced before, as if someone had placed a massive weight on my chest while simultaneously squeezing my left arm in a vice. I remember thinking, this can't be happening, as I slumped against the kitchen counter. The bag of peas fell from my hand, scattering across the tile floor like tiny green marbles. I tried to reach for my phone on the counter, but my arms wouldn't cooperate. As I slid down to the floor, I had just enough presence of mind to cry out, "Jesus, help me." Before everything went dark, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the chrome of my dishwasher. My face had turned an alarming shade of gray. What happened next is something the doctors still can't explain. According to the medical records, my neighbor Linda, who later told me she felt a strong urge to come check on me that morning, found me unconscious on my kitchen floor. She immediately called 911, and the paramedics arrived within 8 minutes. But by then, I had already been clinically dead for several minutes. The medical report would later state that I experienced a massive myocardial infarction, a heart attack that should have left significant damage. The paramedics worked on me for 23 minutes in my kitchen and during the ambulance ride. They used the defibrillator 4 times. According to the lead paramedic, Jake Thompson, they were about to call time of death when my heart suddenly started beating again with a strength that surprised everyone present. But what happened during those 23 minutes, what I saw, what I learned, and what I was shown about the times we're living in and what's coming, that's why I'm sharing this testimony. Because while my body lay lifeless on that kitchen floor, my spirit experienced something so profound, so urgent, that I can no longer remain quiet about it. The message I was given isn't just for me or even just for regular churchgoers, it's for everyone who has ears to hear and eyes to see. The first thing I noticed was the absence of pain. One moment I was experiencing the most intense agony of my life, and the next, nothing. No pain, no pressure, no fear. The arthritis that had bothered my knees for the past decade was gone. The slight stiffness in my lower back that I'd grown accustomed to vanished. I felt lighter, younger somehow, as if years of physical burden had been lifted from me. I found myself floating above my kitchen, watching as the paramedics worked frantically over my body. It should have been terrifying, but somehow it wasn't. I could see Linda, my neighbor, standing in the corner with tears streaming down her face, praying fervently. I wanted to tell her it was okay, that I was fine, but I knew she couldn't hear me. That's when I noticed the light. It wasn't like sunlight or the harsh fluorescent lights of the kitchen, it was something entirely different. The best way I can describe it is like liquid gold, but even that doesn't do it justice. It was alive somehow, pulsing with a warmth and intelligence that I could feel. The light seemed to be coming from everywhere and nowhere at the same time, and as it grew stronger, my kitchen began to fade away. I found myself in what I can only describe as a space between spaces. It wasn't heaven, at least, not yet, but it wasn't earth either. Everything around me was suffused with colors that don't exist in our world. Imagine if you could see joy as a color, or if peace had a hue, that's what it was like. I remember thinking, how am I going to describe this to Tom, knowing that human language would fall woefully short. That's when I heard my name being called, Margaret. The voice was unlike anything I'd ever heard before, it seemed to come from inside me and all around me at the same time. It carried such authority that every atom of my being snapped to attention, yet it was also filled with a love so profound it brought tears to my eyes. I turned, though I'm not sure how, since I didn't have a physical body, and saw him. The being standing before me was nothing like the angels we see on Christmas cards or in children's Bible story books. He was magnificent and terrifying all at once. His form seemed to shift and change as I looked at him, sometimes appearing as tall as a mountain, other times more human-sized. His eyes, oh, his eyes. They were like looking into the depths of the universe, filled with stars and galaxies and wisdom beyond comprehension. Light seemed to ripple off him in waves, and I felt myself wanting to fall prostrate before him, though again, I had no physical body to do so. "Fear not," he said, and immediately all trace of fear vanished from my being. "The Lord has sent me to show you what must soon take place. Time grows short, and many sleep. Watch and remember, for what you are about to see is not for you alone." Suddenly, we were moving. The space around us seemed to fold and unfold like pages in a book. The angel, for I knew now that's what he was, spoke again. Many in the church have grown comfortable in their slumber, believing they have much time. But just as you did not expect your life to change this morning in your kitchen, so too will that day come when many least expect it. As he spoke, scenes began to unfold before us. I saw the earth as if from a great distance, but it wasn't like the beautiful blue marble we see in photographs from space. There was a battle taking place, not with weapons and armies, but with light and darkness. I could see darkness like an oil slick trying to cover the planet, but there were points of light pushing back against it. Some lights were bright and strong, others flickering and weak. "These are my people," I heard the Lord's voice say, though I couldn't see him. The voice was different from the angels, it was like thunder and a whisper at the same time, and it seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Some shine brightly, unafraid to stand for truth. Others are dimming, allowing the cares of the world to overshadow their first love. And many," here his voice grew heavy with sorrow, "many who bear my name have no light at all, having replaced the fire of my spirit with the cold ashes of religion." The angel then directed my attention to what looked like a great timepiece in the heavens. But instead of numbers, it had events marked upon it. Some I recognized as things that had already happened, others were yet to come. I was about to ask about specific dates when the angel raised his hand. "That is not for you to know. The Father alone holds the appointed times. But know this, everything is moving according to his perfect plan, and nothing takes him by surprise." What happened next was both beautiful and terrifying. The angel began to show me series after series of visions, each one more intense than the last. I was shown things about technology, about the church, about coming deceptions so subtle that even the elect would be tested. But I was also shown the incredible move of God that was coming, a revival unlike anything the world has ever seen. "Watch carefully," the angel said, "for what I show you now is crucial." The scene before us changed again, and I saw something that made my heart leap within me. The temperature in that space seemed to drop, if temperature even existed there, and the angel's expression grew more serious. I knew what was coming next would be the most important part of everything I was about to witness. The first vision the angel showed me was of churches, thousands of them, spread across the earth. From the outside, they looked alive and thriving. People filled the pews, hands were raised in worship, and pastors preached from their pulpits. But as I looked closer, I saw something that broke my heart. In many of these churches, there was no actual presence of God. It was like watching a play where actors went through the motions without understanding the meaning behind them. "This is the state of many of my houses," the Lord's voice said. "They have created a form of godliness but denied its power. They sing songs of surrender while clutching tightly to their own ways. They pray for revival but resist the very changes I am trying to bring." But then the scene shifted, and I saw something that filled me with hope. In homes, offices, schools, and yes, even in some churches, I saw small points of light beginning to pulse with increasing brightness. These lights started connecting with each other, forming networks of divine purpose. The angel explained that God was raising up people in every walk of life, teachers, business owners, stay-at-home parents, students, who would carry his presence with supernatural power. "Watch this carefully," the angel instructed, as the scene changed again. I saw a wave of deception sweeping across the earth, but it wasn't what I expected. It wasn't obvious evil or blatant wickedness, it was subtle, attractive, even appearing spiritual. I saw how this deception would come wrapped in messages of love, unity, and progress. The most shocking part was seeing how many Christians would embrace it because it appealed to their desire to be accepted by the world. "The greatest danger," the angel said, "is not that my people will choose evil over good, but that they will choose a lesser good over the highest good. Many will compromise truth in the name of love, not realizing that true love and truth cannot be separated." Then I was shown something about technology that startled me. I saw how advancements that seemed beneficial, and many truly were, would also be used to create a system of control and surveillance beyond anything we've seen before. But here's what was fascinating: I saw how God would use these same technologies to spread His truth in unprecedented ways. The angel showed me believers using these tools with wisdom, reaching people who would never step foot in a church. The vision shifted again, and I saw young people, so many young people, rising up with a faith that put many of us older believers to shame. They weren't interested in comfortable Christianity or watered-down truth. They had encountered God for themselves and were unashamed to stand for Him, even when it cost them opportunities, relationships, or status. "These are my young lions," the Lord said, "who will not bow to the spirit of this age. They will walk in power and authority because they have chosen truth over acceptance." But what I saw next was perhaps the most surprising. I witnessed how God was working through ordinary, everyday moments. A conversation between friends at a coffee shop leading to profound spiritual awakening. A kind word from a store clerk becoming the catalyst for someone's salvation. Simple acts of obedience creating ripple effects in the spiritual realm that affected nations. The angel then showed me something about prayer that transformed my understanding. I saw prayers rising from earth like streams of light, but what amazed me was how the seemingly small prayers, a mother praying over her child's scraped knee, a teenager asking for help with a difficult test, a businessman seeking wisdom for a decision, were often creating the most significant impact in the spiritual realm. These prayers, offered in simple faith and trust, were like lightning bolts against the darkness. "My people have complicated what I made simple," the Lord said. "They look for formulas and techniques when I am looking for relationship and trust." Then I saw something that made me weep, waves of healing and restoration unlike anything we've seen before. But it wasn't happening primarily in big crusades or healing services. It was happening in living rooms, workplaces, and grocery stores. Ordinary believers, walking in extraordinary authority, simply because they had learned to trust and obey. Just as I thought I couldn't take in any more, the angel raised his hand, and everything paused. "There is more you must see," he said, "about the specific events that will unfold. But first, you must understand the heart of what I've shown you." The angel's expression became even more serious as he said, "Now I will show you what must take place before the return of the Lord." The scenes that unfolded before me were both thrilling and sobering. First, I saw 3 distinct waves of awakening spreading across the earth. The first wave was already beginning, a growing hunger for authentic faith and genuine encounters with God. I saw people becoming disillusioned with shallow Christianity and institutional religion. This disillusionment, rather than leading them away from faith, was driving them into a deeper relationship with Jesus. The second wave was a supernatural outpouring that would defy human explanation. I saw people receiving dreams and visions of Jesus, particularly in places where the gospel was restricted. What amazed me was how these supernatural encounters were happening simultaneously across different cultures and nations, yet each was uniquely tailored to the individual's cultural understanding. The third wave was the most powerful, a move of God's Spirit that would transcend all denominational barriers and human programs. But the angel was quick to point out something crucial. "Many will miss this move of God," he said, "because it will not come in the package they expect. Pride and religious tradition will blind many to what God is doing." Then I was shown something about coming challenges that the church would face. I saw 3 specific types of persecution emerging. First would come social persecution, believers being labeled as intolerant and gradually excluded from certain professions and positions of influence. But this pressure would serve to separate the true believers from those who merely wore the label of Christian. The second wave would be economic in nature. I saw how standing for biblical truth would begin to cost people their jobs, business opportunities, and financial stability. Yet in the midst of this, I saw God's people developing new systems of support and community, caring for each other in ways that testified powerfully to the world. The third type of persecution was more direct, but what struck me was how it would backfire against the enemy's plans. Instead of silencing the church, it would unleash a boldness and unity among believers that would draw many to faith. "Watch this carefully," the angel said, directing my attention to what looked like a timeline. I saw how God was specifically preparing people right now for what they would face in the years ahead. Every trial, every difficulty believers were currently experiencing was actually training for their future role in God's plans. I witnessed something remarkable about families. God was raising up households of faith, not just traditional families, but all kinds of family units where people were committed to following Jesus together. These families would become centers of light and refuge in their communities, especially as social structures began to fragment and fail. The angel then showed me something about provision that changed my understanding completely. I saw how God would supply for his people, but it wasn't always in the ways they expected. Some were being prompted now to simplify their lives and become debt-free. Others were being blessed with resources but were learning that these blessings weren't for their comfort, but for kingdom purposes. "Many of my people still struggle with fear about provision," the Lord's voice said, "but I am teaching them to trust me as their source, not the world systems." Then I saw something that startled me, how God would use children in the coming move of his Spirit. I saw young children operating in profound spiritual gifts, having dreams and visions, and speaking truth with a wisdom beyond their years. "The faith of a child will be needed in the days ahead," the angel explained. "Many adults will need to relearn how to trust with childlike faith." The scene shifted again, and I saw how critical the next 2 years would be. "A window of preparation is being given," the angel said. "Those who use this time wisely will be positioned to stand strong through what comes after." I was shown how specific skills and relationships being developed now would become crucial later. Just then, everything paused, and the angel turned to face me directly. His expression was more serious than ever. Now, he said, I must show you what will trigger the beginning of these events. But before he could continue, I felt a pulling sensation. The angel's expression changed to one of understanding. Your time to return has come, he said, but remember this above all, tell my people that the time of comfortable Christianity is over. Tell them that what they do with the next months and years will determine their ability to stand in the times ahead. The enemy's greatest weapon is not persecution or hardship, it is distraction. My people are being distracted from their preparation by good things while missing the essential things. The pulling sensation grew stronger, but the angel had one final message. Tell them 3 things they must do now. First, they must learn to hear my voice for themselves, not through others, but directly. Second, they must root themselves in my word, not just reading it, but living it. Third, they must learn to stand on my promises regardless of what their eyes see or their emotions feel. As the scene began to fade, I heard the Lord's voice one final time, I am coming soon, but first must come the shaking. All that can be shaken will be shaken, so that what cannot be shaken will remain. Tell my people, be ready. The time is shorter than they think. The next thing I knew, I was gasping for air on a hospital bed, surrounded by startled medical staff. The heart monitor was beeping steadily, and I could hear someone calling for a doctor. I later learned that my recovery was medically inexplicable. Not only had I survived being clinically dead for 23 minutes, but I had no brain damage or lasting heart damage, but I was changed. Everything I had seen was seared into my memory with perfect clarity. The doctors called it a miracle. My family called it a blessing. But I knew it was more than that. It was a warning, a call to preparation, and a message of hope that I had to share. That was 8 months ago. Since then, I've watched as some of what I was shown has already begun to unfold. The hunger for authentic faith, the increasing pressure on believers, the supernatural encounters people are experiencing, it's all happening just as I was shown. But there's so much more to come, and that's why I can't stay silent. I'm not sharing this testimony for attention or acclaim. Believe me, I'd much rather be back in my kitchen baking casseroles or playing with my grandchildren. But the urgency of what I was shown compels me to speak. This message isn't just for church-going Christians, it's for anyone who has ears to hear and eyes to see. If you're watching this and something stirs in your spirit, that's not by accident. Maybe you've been feeling a sense of urgency yourself, a knowing that something is coming, that we're living in significant times. That's the Holy Spirit confirming this truth in your heart. The question isn't whether these things will happen, they will. The question is, will you be ready? Here's what I believe God is calling us all to do right now. First, get serious about your relationship with Jesus. Not religion, not church attendance, but a real, personal relationship. If you don't know Him personally, don't wait another day. If you do know Him, go deeper. The depth of your relationship with Him now will determine your strength to stand in the days ahead. Second, immerse yourself in God's Word. Not just reading it, but studying it, memorizing it, living it. The deception coming is so subtle that only those who are grounded in truth will recognize it. Third, learn to hear God's voice for yourself. The time is coming when you won't be able to rely on others to tell you what God is saying. You need to know His voice as clearly as you know your closest friends. Finally, remember this, everything I was shown was permeated with hope. Yes, challenging times are coming, but God is not wringing His hands in heaven, worried about how things will turn out. He is in complete control, and He is preparing His people for the greatest outpouring of His Spirit this world has ever seen. Before I close, I want to speak directly to those who might be skeptical of what I've shared. I understand, I was once skeptical too. I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to seek God for yourself. Ask Him to show you the truth. He is faithful to answer those who genuinely seek Him. And to those who feel afraid after hearing this testimony, don't be. Fear is not from God. Everything I was shown was about preparation, not fear. God is not telling us these things to frighten us, but to prepare us. Perfect love casts out all fear, and God's love for His people is perfect. The kitchen timer that was counting down that February morning when my heart stopped, it was set for 60 minutes. But God's timer, that's counting down too, and none of us knows how much time is left. What we do know is this: the time to prepare is now. Will you be ready?